Quotations from myself, segment 63, quotation number 812. When I observe young people today, I am amazed and somewhat envious too, at how free and uninhibited many of them are, in comparison with the way I and my friends were growing up in the 50s. But when I think about the price I had to pay for this enviable freedom in multiple broken relationships and loves, in pain and disappointment, in drug and alcohol abuse, in venereal diseases, terminated pregnancy, nervous breakdowns, and finally, in the overwhelming horrors of AIDS, my small envy dissolves in a vast sea of compassion. And even their wanted openness and willingness to take chances begin to look less as that of a curious explorer or passionate adventurer, and more like a behavior of the bored and satiated who had tried almost everything without finding much joy in anything, but still is looking for something new to get hopefully excited about. And though the fearless they may be, it is a fearlessness of the battle-hardened soldiers which comes not from innate bravery, but from desensitization and emotional callousness, and more or less clear intimation there are a few things left which could be worse than what they have already experienced. 8:13. Every now and then I am accused of being inconsistent. And I have to admit that, though I try very hard not to be, I must have been inconsistent on more than a few occasions. I also sometimes remind others, not too often I hope, of their inconsistency. And in general, I don't think I have ever met a single person who was completely free from this sin. But if the majority of people share a certain trait in common, it is not unreasonable to look upon it not as an aberration, but as a norm, requiring, of course, some explanation. The most obvious one, ulterior motivation excluded, is that it is difficult to always remember what one has said or done in the past in the circumstances similar to the present ones. On the other hand, perhaps the similarity is only apparent but not the real one. And the inconsistency of men, including even the greatest philosophers, are but a reflection of the infinitely complex world and life in man's finite ideas and actions. Now, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't always so broad-minded and understanding. But as I grow older, I'm becoming more empathic and tolerant toward my fellow men's shortcomings, or at least towards those I shared with them. 8:14. The arrogance of the privileged is so deeply ingrained in the members of the upper class that neither enlightenment nor intelligence, not even the strongly professed and sincerely held beliefs that all men are created equal, can completely erase it either from their speech or behavior. Therefore, they have to, for their own sake, be constantly on alert, not to be betrayed by slip of the tongue or by an inadvertent gesture, such an embarrassing by the today's standards, bred in the bone snobbery. 8:15. Some people would definitely like you more, the more you, by failing, give them an opportunity not only to demonstrate how kind and compassionate they are by helping you, but also as a bonus to show how much better and successful they are at what you were trying to do but have failed. Needless to say, there is always the clever fellows who, being more pragmatic than proud, would use this human weakness for self-aggrandizement to their advantage and feign helplessness and inaptitude to get what they want from others. On the other hand, those who are in fact incompetent and inept, but unwilling to admit it even to themselves, usually strongly resent any offering of help, seeing it as a reminder of their inadequacy or even accusation of it, and in the extreme cases would bite the hand that feeds them, that is, would literally hate those who help them, and given the opportunity repay the good with the evil. 8:16. Putting the blame for our own inability or laziness to see clearly through life on the so-called infinite complexity of it is the most trite and yet the most often used excuse. Its main attraction, besides relieving us of necessity to think hard, is that it seems to bestow on its practitioner the aura of intellectual sophistication without the slightest effort on his part, and imply the respectable, all-tried, nothing-known worldly wariness in somebody who, in fact, had never strayed too far from his home base. But because of its wide usage, for almost everyone is guilty of resorting to it one time or another, this lamest of excuses has miraculously attained the status of the supreme wisdom, and there is nobody who would dare to say loudly that the emperor has no clothes on. 8:17. I not only feel, I know I am different from the others. But it is not the kind of objective fingerprint difference each individual willy-nilly possesses. No, I am different in my own peculiar way. In that, I like the majority of men I know. I don't mind to be different, and as far as I can remember, never even tried to be like those around me or anybody else. On the contrary, as soon as I have discovered my individuality, I deliberately chose to celebrate and protect it from the relentless pressure to conform, and instead of hiding my uniqueness, displayed it freely and unashamedly. And because I value it so much in myself, I am more than willing, nay eager, to grant it to anyone else. 8:18. For all those teen and not so teenagers who love to defy their parents, even to brag to each other, or just about anybody willing to listen, about doing exactly the opposite of what their parents want them to do, I have a question. How come you don't rebel against the popular culture, or any specific subculture, which is but a variation thereof, which is 100 times more oppressive and dictatorial in telling you what to do, what to think, what to feel, how to dress, what to eat, and so on and so forth, from the most mundane to the most personal and intimate in your life. So why don't you defy the big father or big mother? And by the way, unlike the big brother, they don't watch you, that's for sure. And for a simple reason. They just don't give a damn about you. Now, if you are still looking for an answer, which is highly unlikely, don't bother. For I have got ready one for you. You just have no personal courage to remain true to yourself in this case. It is much easier and safer to oppose your loving, endlessly forgiving, and essentially powerless small parent than to disobey the omnipresent, omnipotent, and definitely unforgiving the big one, the popular culture. 8:19. Even if it's true what Shakespeare has said about the world being a stage where every man must play a part, it doesn't answer the bigger, much bigger question of life. How one is to know which part is his to play and who is in charge of the casting. The importance of this question must be painfully clear to anyone who throughout his life felt frustrated again and again in his attempt to play a part he believed was his, and frustrated by those around him who denied being as such and tried to impose on him the role he couldn't or wouldn't play. And I rarely saw people becoming more angry than when they felt subjected to such a denial and imposition. 8:20. To obsessively dwell on the meaning and purpose of one's life is a peculiar curse of man. 8:21. The idea of predestination, while diminishing or even abolishing the notions of man's sovereignty over his fate, compensate this loss with the other notion, which must be more crucial to man's precarious sense of self-esteem. The notion that one's life has some determined purpose in the greater scheme of things, as opposed to the spirit-crushing suspicion, bordering sometimes on certainty, that one's existence is but a pure accident, and whether one ever lived or not would make any difference. 8:22. Trying to do what one was obviously not meant to, and it shouldn't take a lifetime to discover that, can only lead to disappointment, frustration, and embarrassment. So instead of, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again, the famous motto of the bull-headed and maniac obsessive, you should spend your time and life more productively and definitely more enjoyably by first finding out what you are really good at, which isn't as difficult as it seems, or what we can do with the least effort while enjoying it the most must be it. And then be happy by doing just that, which is almost always possible, provided one doesn't seek any external rewards.